First, we will ask to Nick Sireau to provide the patient vision. Nick is the chairman and chief executive officer of AKU Society, and I recognize in Nick one of the leaders of our rare disease community when there was nothing happening for his diseases. He has really created leadership and catalyzed different stakeholders, developed research projects, developed services, created a voice. That's a lot. So we really think, Nick, that you are the right person to tell us what could we do to address the unmet medical needs 5 years or 10 years from now.
Thank you, Jan. Yesterday, I spent the day with a friend who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, I suspect that a lot of you have heard about EDS. Until I'd met her, I hadn't. She's got a particularly nasty form of EDS, and it's due to a problem with protein and collagen, which basically means they get stretchy skin and loose joints and fragile bones and all kinds of other issues. And we were spending the day because we were doing a new video to do some crowdfunding. But what was really interesting and very moving was to hear her story. The fact that she had gone through a complete diagnostic odyssey to actually get a diagnosis, that her sister's also affected, that her child, her daughter, who's now in her 20s, was also affected, that it took her years to get that, and that it had many, many meetings with doctors, with clinicians who often didn't believe her, who sent her for psychiatric treatment, etc. Also to the point that in her condition, anesthetics don't work on her. So when she was a child getting teeth pulled out by the dentist, she would scream. People thought that she was overdoing it. When she was giving birth, she had a cesarean section. You can imagine the pain, okay? Absolutely horrific. And now she was asking me yesterday, we have this potential treatment that might be helpful, you know. She's managed to get access to it. She knows that it helps. But she was like, it's off-label. The clinicians all dismiss it. The scientists aren't interested, industry's not interested, and yet we as patients believe that it can do something. And the reason that people are interested is that it's the same argument. People say, where is the evidence? And she says, well, there isn't any evidence because there aren't any trials or any studies on it, and because it's so rare. And because there aren't any trials, there's no evidence. And you get caught in this circular argument. And that's been my personal experience. So my children have both got alkaptonuria, black bone disease. You can read about it. It gets steadily worse as life progresses. And we had this drug called nitisinone, okay, which a number of years ago the NIH started to study. But the problem that we had with such a disease that takes so long to develop on such a small population was that when our patients went to see their doctors saying, we want to be able to take this drug, the doctors would say to them, well, we can't prescribe it because there's no evidence. And we were stuck in that eternal cycle. And I think that must affect many, many rare diseases with small populations, very complex conditions over a long period of time. Now, I'm in a fortunate position for a number of reasons. We've just finished a phase 2 trial a few weeks ago that was very successful, and we're just about to launch a phase 3 trial for this drug. But along the way, I've been helped by some very particular and kind people and organizations. To start with EURORDIS. 3-4 years ago when I first approached them with the problem I had, they invited me to their summer school and provided training, etc. Secondly, I was very fortunate that the company that we approached that has developed the drug, Sobi, was a company with strong values and that was willing to actually engage with us. And thirdly, I was very fortunate because the team of scientists and clinicians in Liverpool have been dedicated to this cause. So we had, in a way, a perfect combination to set up this consortium. But there were still a number of frustrations. First of all, access to funding. Okay, if it hadn't been for the European Commission FP7, we would have never managed to get the funding to do these trials. On a national level, there's very little funding in the UK, and I suspect that's the same thing in many different countries. Secondly, actually getting the funding. Any of you who've applied for FP7 will know what a kind of nightmare it is, and it's only because it's big money that it's actually worth it. Okay. Thirdly, sorry, I've lost my... That's right. Thirdly, the bureaucratic maze, okay? I'm completely new to clinical trials and to science. I'm not a scientist. My PhD was in social psychology. I knew nothing of all this before I started. But I have been absolutely shocked by the amount of bureaucracy that is needed to get these trials off the ground. Now, each individual institution you apply for, whether it's the EMA or the MHRA, do a very good job. But together, we had more than 40 forms to fill in, some more than 100 pages long. And as a patient, that's really frustrating because these committees keep on appearing, each of them with their own thing to say, which is often very justified, but actually is very difficult to manage. So that's the third thing, okay? So what are the solutions? Well, I don't claim to have kind of the magic bullet. A few weeks ago, we had a workshop. We've set up a new charity in the UK called Find a Cure, which is all about providing training to patient groups, okay? Hands-on training on everything like fundraising, clinical trials, etc. And we asked them, they had 50 people at this workshop, more than half of them were patients, and we asked them, what are the big challenges you face? Funnily enough, the top challenge is, how do we actually interact with scientists and academia? But then there was a whole bunch of others. How do we interact with industry? Where do we raise funds? What's a clinical trial? What's an orphan designation? How do I run a patient group? How do I register as a charity? All these different things. And so coming out of that, I have really 4 kind of proposals that I'd like to make. One is, we need a collaborative system which allows us to actually identify the different groups that can work together on different rare diseases so that it doesn't all depend on individuals having to go around to conferences, meet the right people, good fortune coming in to actually set up these groups. We need a systematic system to actually do this, to create these networks, okay? Because how many things are getting lost along the way? Secondly, we need faster, better and more funding. So I'm very pleased that Horizon 2020 has got this call for rare diseases. That's fantastic. We also need that at national level in each country for pots of money for registries, natural studies, clinical trials, basic science, all those things. We need money for that because otherwise it's very difficult. Thirdly, we need a focus on patient needs. The patient needs to be at the center of this because patients are actually funders, developers, and implementers of research. And finally, we need a simpler overall system. We need something which is not as bureaucratic, which is streamlined, and which is not as frustrating for us who are trying to develop these drugs. And then finally, I think we need to remember that rare diseases have implications that are far wider than our own rare diseases. William Harvey, who discovered blood circulation in the 17th century, already said that the study of rare diseases was a way of understanding common diseases. William Bateson, who invented the word genetics 100 years ago, said the same. Archibald Garrod, who identified my kid's disease, alkaptonuria, 100 years ago, said the same. Francis Collins, head of the NIH, said the same. Statins were developed through the study of an ultra-rare disease, familial hypercholesterolemia. Bisphosphonates were developed thanks to the study of hyperphosphatasia. So the research into rare diseases has much wide-reading implications, and I think that's why it's important. Thank you.
Thank you.